to our next episode of the Odd Fellows Oddcast. And joining us today in talking about the differences between the Masons and the Odd Fellows is my friend Eddie LeBoeuf, who is from Louisiana. He's actually from New Orleans. And he is the Deputy Grandmaster of the Odd Fellows District there in Louisiana. And also my friend Sully, who is from Washington, D.C. And he's guy's got some really good spices that he sells, just so that you know. I've actually tried them. They're really fantastic. I just thought I'd throw that in. A little bit of
Better than Louisiana? I just don't know. I mean, come on, I'm from
well,
Louisiana here.
now, if you actually sold some, I would be very happy to try them because I am a hot sauce fanatic. So, you know, that's one of those things that I take very seriously. You got something, I want to try it. So, and when I come visit New Orleans, I will absolutely let you take me around to some place with some hot sauce.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, Brother LeBoeuf, if you've got some hookups there with the hot sauce industry in Louisiana, let me know, because I'd love to sell some stuff direct from there.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe make that happen.
We could have a whole food episode here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. So I would like you to, introduce yourself a little bit and, just say something about your involvement with the Odd Fellows and also the Masons so that people have an idea of who it is that is answering these questions, which I have because I am not a Mason. I have friends who are Masons, but I'm not. And so I don't know really enough about it to be someone answering questions. So please go ahead. Eddie, you want to shoot first?
Sure. So since this is an Odd Fellow / Masonic episode, I'll go through as quickly as I can some of my various offices and stuff. I am a past master level lodge number 373, and I'm active in what we call the Scottish Rite and New York Rite. In the Scottish Rite, I'm what's called a 32nd degree Knight Commander of the Court of Honor. It's a distinction between the 32nd and the 33rd. However, it is not a degree nor a half a degree. I'm on the degree team, and I'm the one that says that. And I said degree team, but it's a conferral investiture team, I should say. So it's in between. While it's not a degree or half a degree, it is a prerequisite in the Southern jurisdiction to receive the 33rd, or else you can't even be considered for it, which is an honorary degree. In the Valley of New Orleans, the Scottish Rite, I have served as past Commander of Kadash and past Master of Kadash. And this year I'm going in as Venerable Master of the Lodge of Perfection, which is the 14th degree. It sounds weird, but we do all our business in the 14th degree in the Valley. So this year I will be leading the Valley of New Orleans. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also active in the York Rite. I'm a Knight York Cross of Honor, which means I served as a past master, a past high priest of a chapter of Royal Arch Masons, past illustrious master of Cryptic Masons, and a past eminent commander of a commandery of Knights Templars. And I served the Grand Chapter several times, and we can talk more about this later. These bodies are like what the encampment is in Odd Fellows. I'm currently the Grand King of the Grand Chapter of Royal Arch Masons, and this year coming, if the Grand Chapter is willing, I will be the Grand High Priest of Louisiana Royal Arch Masons. And another big thing I'm doing this year is I was just elected Worshipful Master of Etoile Polaire Lodge number 1 in New Orleans, chartered in 1794. Yes, Polar Star, exactly.
North Star, yeah.
Yes.
And, I'm sorry. Yeah, Polar Star, right?
Well, the Polar Star, right? Is the North Star, yeah. So yes, it jobs out to the same thing. But it's a 226-year-old lodge. It was chartered in 1794. There is another lodge that's slightly older than us, Perfect Union number 1, and they are not always very enthusiastic that we have the number 1 as well as them. In fact, I think in the computer, they're listed as 0, but their dues card says number 1. And I think if they had their way, we would not be number 1, but it is what it is. It was like there when I got there. But, and Etoile Polaire is a Scottish Rite lodge in the first 3 degrees. This is a very rare thing in Freemasonry. Louisiana is one of the only states that has lodges that work the Scottish Rite rituals in the symbolic lodge, which is the first 3 degrees. Etoile Polaire is one of the 10 lodges. I hear there's one in New York, and one in Hawaii, and maybe one in California. But like literally, I hear like it's one per these states. We have 10 of them. It's the famous 16th Masonic District. And
Wow.
I joined Odd Fellows because I didn't want to see it die. The
Huh.
problem is I fell in love with Odd Fellows Rest, and any of your listeners who are familiar with the public relations group you have on Facebook, you have the plaque of the Southwestern tomb, which is formerly the Teutonia tomb, as at least it was the cover of that group. Is that the same cover? Have you changed it?
Yeah, I believe that
Did
it
you
is
know
that
it came
one.
from our cemetery?
I certainly do, and I'm
Yeah,
actually so much in love with that particular piece of,
it's a
bas
beautiful
relief.
piece.
I'm actually going to share it because as we talk about the symbols, it's a perfect template. It's emblematic, so
Yeah.
obviously it's a good example for us to talk about.
So I wanted to see Oddfellows Rest grow and develop, and I wanted to see Oddfellows not disappear from New Orleans or from Louisiana, because it was holding on by a thread in Louisiana. Now, an interesting side note is the oldest Oddfellows Lodge in Louisiana was Louisiana #1, and it met at Etoile Polaire in the same building, and some of their stuff is still there. We still have their old Widows and Orphans box. It has their name on it. And Wildly Encampment #1 has their ballot box still there. With all these are defunct, they're gone. So I started this mission to bring Oddfellows back to New Orleans, and with some help of a lot of people, we got it done. And now we instituted Crescent City #73, and we're going strong.
Great.
And for whatever reason, I was put in the Grand Line, maybe because of my enthusiasm, and they knew I also had other leadership stuff I do. So anyway, I think that's it.
Okay. Okay. Well, here's the interesting thing. I watched this YouTube video of these guys who are Masons talking about Oddfellows. And, I thought to myself, and I'll put a link to it just because it's a really good video. It had a lot of views. And, I thought to myself, this is really from a Mason's point of view. Guys who are Oddfellows look at this and they go, what, like, I am listening to what you're saying. I'm like, wow, man, it sounds like you do a lot of stuff, but I've got no clue what you're talking about. And it's because the terminology of the different things that you're talking about, whenever you say 32nd degree or, 33rd degree, and you talk about a degree team, that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well, these are familiar terms, but my understanding is they don't really mean the same thing, right? So
Maybe it depends.
right, so that's the problem. If you were in Masons, you would know. So I'm going to turn to Sully real quick and ask him. Now look, this is not a competition. So I think that Eddie may have been involved longer or something. I don't know. Maybe you've got an even longer list of credentials. So go right ahead.
I'm a 999th degree Mason, and
Oh, really?
I'm a past Grand Master of the Illuminati. So I outrank him. No, he obviously his credentials are incredible. But interesting thing I can say, I am currently a junior warden of a DC Masonic Lodge, and I actually joined. I have a very interesting Masonic story journey. So actually, joining a Mason Lodge was how I got into the Odd Fellows, and after I joined that lodge, I started reading Albert Pike, and was fascinated by it. Read the entire Morals and Dogma, and all 600 and some pages. And then I was a little dissatisfied with the lodge I was in, so I spread out. I joined the Odd Fellows, and I joined the Knights of Pythias. Because I joined the Odd Fellows because we were meeting in an Odd Fellows hall, and then I joined the Knights of Pythias because of our Grand Master in DC at the time was Michelle Vidlock, and she is a legacy Knights of Pythias affiliate, thanks to her father, who Al Saltzman, who was the for like 20 years was the guy running the Knights of Pythias as the Supreme Secretary. So Dan Vidlock and Michelle Vidlock got me to the Knights of Pythias, and then kind of went full circle because I was like, you know what, I've demitted from that other Masonic situation. I'll see if a regular Masonic lodge will have me, because if you want to become a 99th degree Mason, you can. And Masons will just go, okay, yeah, you're one of those. Okay. So and that's an option. There's people out there, and they'll find people from all around the world. So I mean, if it is what you want, if you just want to hang out and talk with people about stuff, you can join any kind of lodge, and there's all sorts of lodges out there. But if you just want to join a regular lodge, and that meaning, that the word regular there has a lot of meanings, and if you just want to join a regular one that's not going to try to fly you to Romania to get a Rite of Misrum in Memphis degree, then yeah, you want to find one that's in the Tyler's book, and can hook you up with just the right people. And so I joined regular Masonry, and about 5 years ago, and now I'm on my way to being a worshipful master.
Okay.
So
well, that's awesome.
Yeah. But it was really inspired by, my whole journey was inspired by Albert Pike, because his writings were incredible. And then to find out, joining the Odd Fellows, joining a regular Odd Fellows lodge that that also had a irregular Masonic lodge attached to it, kind of fascinated me, because I actually became more interested in the Odd Fellows, because I thought that was my real connection to Pike. Now was the Odd Fellows, because he was an Odd Fellow back in the day, and I was really curious to know how much, because if you've read Morals and Dogma, it's incredibly progressive, especially for the 1800s, just mind-blowing stuff. He's very, very pro freedom of speech, pro civil rights, pro human rights, and specifically the kind of speech that we were talking about before the podcast. We were talking about my shirt, the slants here, who had to fight for their name all the way up to the Supreme Court, and 150 years ago, or 180 years ago, he was writing about stuff like that, like saying like freedom of speech is that important, and breaking it down from a legal, philosophical perspective about why freedom of speech is something that must be defended, and as a Freemason you should defend it. The Élu de la Neuf section of Morals and Dogma, incredible read.
Okay.
And but yeah, that's really what pushed me further into Freemasonry, was wanting to learn the motivations of just one of the most eloquent writers, leaders, compilers of other people's great writing of all time, Albert Pike.
Well, another mouthful. That was really a lot, but unfortunately for people who are, like I said, they're odd fellows, won't completely grasp everything that you're saying either. But I think that we should kind of back things up even a little further than that. So one of the things that we absolutely have in common between Masons and Odd Fellows is that, we were part of the, golden age of fraternity. There was a time, and historians will, have said this, that in the United States, because it was mostly men who were in, fraternities, somewhere between 2 and 4 out of every 10 men. And they don't know the exact numbers because there's some overlap. You were either one or more different fraternities, like, yourself, Sully, you're in not just Odd Fellows and Masons, you're also in another one. And I think that the thing that we all have in common is the whole brotherhood part of it. It's like, you know, seeing your neighbor as family and, you know, being there for them, which is a lot of based on a lot of the tenets of Odd Fellows. Now, I would imagine that those are also similar to the tenets of Masonry. Now, I'm going to have to put that into your, you know, ball court and have you answer the question. But you know, I'd like to kind of start going through some of the different common threads that we have before we really dive into like some of the big differences, or well, more subtle differences. One of the really big differences is, from what I understand, Odd Fellows have embraced the idea of having women in their lodges. And my understanding is that Masons haven't completely embraced that, and that there's a percentage of lodges that they allow women, while there's still a large percentage that don't. Is that correct?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll please, first of all, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so and Sully touched on this. The whole idea of regular Freemasonry is, I think, is kind of relative depending on what lodge you're coming from. However, what we call regular Freemasonry is part of a book, like the Tyler's book, that has a list of lodges. And it's kind of funny, and Christopher Hodapp talks about this really good in Freemasons for Dummies, how all this recognition is a really complicated system of which Grand Lodges recognize which Grand Lodges in Masonry. And collectively, we tend to call that regular Freemasonry, while you have Prince Hall Freemasonry, which is primarily composed of African Americans. Not entirely, just like regular Freemasonry is not composed primarily of other, because we do have all races in Louisiana, and several other what we call regular lodges have different races as well. The barrier is just breaking down. What confuses some people is that technically it's a different organization. Yes, we have the same symbols, the rituals are probably the same. It even gets deeper. In Louisiana, we have something called the Supreme Council of Scottish Rite, which is of Louisiana, the Supreme Council of Louisiana, which is also primarily African American. And where I do hope for a day where all these bodies are going to recognize each other. In some states, Prince Hall has been recognized, but each state has its own Grand Lodge, and they have to come together and meet. So regular Freemasonry gets to be kind of a relative term. Now, primarily what you're talking about is lodges that accept women. I think the largest one would be what's called Ledroit Humane, if I'm saying it right. Sully, you have any? They are co-Masonry, co-Freemasonry, Ledroit
is
Humane.
that out of France?
I think it's out of France, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it's Le Droit Humain.
Yeah, and I'm even I'm a LeBoeuf, don't mean I can speak it.
Yeah, I've actually seen that website. You know, the one that's based out of Paris, if I remember correctly. It's a beautiful website. It's got a lot of really great stuff about Masons, and I was shocked to see like the leader of it is a woman. I'm like, wow, that's progressive. And then you know, I started hearing like how women aren't allowed in, you know, regular lodges. And you know, somebody explained it to me as like, oh yeah, well, it's kind of like progressive versus, you know, conservative. You know,
it's
like,
well, it's almost unheard of in the United States. I think they might have established one co-Masonic lodge or two. I don't know, have the statistic in front of me, but it's super rare in the United States that I know of. And I would almost be careful if someone were to claim to have a lodge, because there was kind of a scam going on a while back where I think it was called Universal Freemasonry. At least to me, it's a scam because I'm in regular Freemasonry. Maybe they were great. Maybe they were awesome. I don't know. I didn't have nothing to do with them. But I believe they were selling initiations through the internet where you just pay a fee and they just bless you a Mason or something. Wow. Then again, I don't know. Maybe they weren't.
So,
well, go ahead. So,
yeah. This is one of those things where I feel like clandestiny historically has had a very interesting place in Freemasonry, and now clandestine obviously means hidden or secret, but colloquially in Freemasonry it's a term for an unrecognized lodge. So, you know, basically, in Odd Fellows terms, it would be like, so my son can't join the Odd Fellows for another, what, 15 and a half years, right? It's 16 you have to be to join. So yeah, I could,
16.
so if I said, well, we're starting the Sully Lodge of Odd Fellows where a 3-year-old can join, and now, so in 2.5 years, my baby boy will become the vice grand of Sully Lodge number, and then I could even, number 7,
Okay.
so, and of Washington D.C. Now people will be like, well, where's this lodge from again? And I'd be like, well, it's from the Grand Oriental Lodge of Washington D.C. That's our Grand Lodge. We're from the Grand Oriental Lodge of Washington D.C. That's how we got our dispensation. And I could have it all. I could order online. I could go to Fiverr and have somebody print up a thing for me saying this is the Grand Oriental Odd Fellows of Washington D.C. and here's his dispensation. And yeah, it's that sort of stuff happens. And but that would be an irregular lodge. That'd be an irregular Odd Fellows Lodge. It's not recognized by any Odd Fellow Lodge. No Grand United Order. No IOOF. Nobody recognizes it. It's just, me spilling all the beans about the Odd Fellows to my 3-year-old son in 2.5 years. And that sort of stuff happens in Freemasonry. It's happened in Freemasonry throughout history. And there's an amazing story from the Civil War where Fenians, the Irish mercenaries, were going around doing sabotage. They're burning down encampments and stuff on behalf of the I can't remember which side it was. The Fenians worked for whoever paid them. So
so they were mercenaries.
Yeah, they were mercenaries, and these are Irish immigrants who barely spoke English, and they caught this 12-year-old boy. The Union soldiers, they caught this 12-year-old boy who was lighting encampment stuff on fire, and military camps on fire. And so they grab him, they put him on the firing line. They're going to shoot him, and then the sister comes running in. She's about 14 or 15. She comes running in and does the "Hey, how you doing? I'm having a bad time" sign of a Freemason. And then she says, "Hey, how you doing? I'm having a bad time" as a Freemason. Of course, I'm substituting all the words and stuff.
Right.
The story was told to me in lodge, so they were able to say all the stuff. But they then couple of the officers were Freemasons, so they grab her and they pull her aside, and she knew everything. She knew all those stuff. And once again, this is just a Fenian mercenary female, somehow knew all the secrets of Freemasonry and was able to negotiate her brother's release. And they were able to run off into the woods and never be seen or heard from again. And that information saved her brother's life. But how did she get it? And she got it because she was clandestine. She was a clandestinely made Mason. And that, like I said, there's some value to that historically, because if nothing else, just to give us that WTF story from the Civil War to say, well, what was that about? But yeah, so she was clandestinely made. Women are not supposed to be made Freemasons, especially a very young girl. She's not supposed to have all the secrets, but she had that information and she was able to save her family's life there. Interesting stuff. But when it comes to modern women being involved in Freemasonry, I'm really not. You two are both more familiar with the external side of it. I've only seen the internal conflict here in DC, where there are people pushing for it, and I to be honest, I would not want to subject a woman to our meetings and all the busyness that goes along with it. I can't imagine that a woman is watching us, wear our aprons and file into a meeting and be like, that boys club, I really want to get in there. But if there really is a draw for that, if there's women that want to join, I
Well, I think you've got some good points. I mean, why would, a woman necessarily want to join an organization that's all men? But, sometimes that's exactly, what it is that some people want to do. They want to break the glass ceiling. And, if somebody really wants to do that, well, then, if they're given the opportunity, they certainly, if they, are willing to do it the way that it's been done by the men, then, all the more power to them. But I just wanted to draw the distinction between how it is that Odd Fellows, have embraced, women joining their lodges since about 20 years ago. And the Masons obviously still haven't quite decided to open up the doors. Your point, Sully, being very well taken, that they may not really want to if they knew everything that was in store. I've heard that about the Amos side degrees, that some people, their opinion is it's kind of like a lot of, grab assery, it's like kind of pranks and stuff like that. And it's like, well, a woman probably wouldn't want to be put through those sort of things as initiation. It's like the sort of hazing is a little, dicey, and the woman may not want to do that if she has the kind of dignity that you would expect.
I'd say we don't. It's not hazing. We don't haze an Amos. And I would like to apologize if anybody's watching this or listening to this and they're familiar with Amos. The historic Mithras 100 Sanctorum is not dead, and but Grand Monarchos, Supreme Vizier Walterman and myself this has been a rough year for us. So we have an Amos in DC here, but it's been a little neglected thanks to 2020, and that's I'm really ashamed to say that, but we're getting stuff back on track. So
well, that's good.
Everyone we've let down, or I've let down, apologies, and things are getting back on track. But yes, you are correct. There is a lot of fun stuff that I couldn't imagine being wildly unisex. And on top of that too, you're dealing with an issue of all right, two main points. One is the effect on female auxiliary bodies, which is nothing but negative. So like basically if and then the other point would be not a human rights issue to exclude someone from something fun.
Okay.
So the first point.
Let me restate your point on that, because I understand what you're saying. One of the reasons that people cited that Odd Fellows, as a men's organization that didn't allow women, started allowing women in is because their numbers had been decreasing so significantly that there were lodges that were closing left and right because they didn't have that fifth person. And so, well, if you have women who are in the Rebecca's organization who are willing to join the Odd Fellows Lodge, then it will help to bolster those numbers for those really small lodges. So it was kind of like a self-preservation thing that they did that. But there wasn't really anything that the men were doing in Odd Fellowship that would really be offensive to women anyway, which is very different than, say, the Amos, which, by the way, is the ancient
mystical order of the
Samaritans, right? Okay, thanks. And just for those who have no idea what we're talking about as far as Odd Fellows or Masons or Amos or anything like that goes, we were talking before about how there were a ton of different, there were a lot of people that were in fraternities, and a lot of them were in different fraternities. We haven't even begun to cover the different number of Odd Fellows organizations that were in the United States, of which there are primarily two left. One is primarily African-American, one, the Grand United, order of Odd Fellows. I think I said that right.
Mhm.
And the other one is the regular Odd Fellows, which those two organizations are kind of it. But there used to be more. As a matter of fact, some of the
Independent Order of Odd Fellows.
Independent
I think,
Order of Odd Fellows,
yeah,
yes.
is what we are.
Thank you for pointing that
Yeah.
out. But yeah, there used to be other orders of Odd Fellows in the United States, and these all originated in England during a time when the country turned to these things that they would call box clubs, which were just people that were in a neighborhood, and they would get together and they would support each other by putting money into a box to help somebody if they were in need. And so it kind of became a big social thing to instead of relying on the king or the queen, they could kind of turn to each other in times of need. And so it was a really good thing in general, because it was a very Christian thing to do. To count on your neighbors and to love them and care about them. So
can I make a point about the
please go ahead.
on the women's? Okay, so you kind of hit where I was going to go with it. I think it was a preservation thing for Odd Fellows. I wasn't there 20 years ago. I don't know for sure when that happened, but I'm assuming that's what it is. And given that we're still having trouble with membership, I would have to say, despite the fact that we have women in, I would say that it was probably worse then. And I do believe that as long as what we call regular Freemasonry is not suffering that bad, I don't think it's going to ever be on the table. But that's just one person's opinion. And then again, we might have good membership, and a ground swelling of support might come up and want to put on the table. And if that happens, it happens. I go with the will of the majority.
Well,
Okay.
So with a real quick statement, I wanted to say the effect that letting women in the organization had on Odd Fellows was basically a dramatic. So you have a decline of, so radio comes out and people start listening to the radio more, and not going to meetings, and then TV comes out and people really start staying home and not going to meetings. So the golden age starts to fade. Color TV comes out and boom, we're down here. So everything keeps sort of going. Technology, the more technology becomes more invasive and in our lives and interactive and fun. Now you got video games. So we're here where, one of the Knights Pythias lodges I'm involved in brought in 1,100 people in one night. And now we're at this point here where, pornography is legal. There's cures for every disease known to man, and video games exist, and football is on TV, and all this. So here we make quorum and we keep the charter alive. So that's all we can really hope for. And so when you have this going on, you have these thought processes where it's like, oh, we've got this decline. Let's bring the women in, and that'll fix it. Then we'll go like this, we'll get bigger. And all it really does is the decline continues, and now you've stolen the Rebeccas. Now, no woman, my wife is an Odd Fellow. She joined the Odd Fellows with me. She feels no urge, no need to join the Rebeccas. Like it's not a thing for her. She's not thinking, oh, I
feel like the Rebeccas, like Order of Eastern Star, it turns into kind of a half experience. I mean, because the guys can join it too. In Eastern Star, you have the worthy matron runs the chapter of Eastern Star, but there's a worthy patron that sits right next to her the whole time. And to me, it's kind of like not an independent thing for them. Now, Rebecca's, I did join. I've never been to a meeting. I joined Mississippi, so I really don't know much about it other than I went through it. But I don't know. It seems like it's a half experience. I don't blame the women for wanting the full experience and joining Odd Fellows. And my fiance just joined Odd Fellows this past weekend.
Yeah. So I mean, that's
Congrats.
one of the reasons why I like the Odd Fellows, is because it's it is something I can do with my wife. It is something she can go with me to meetings.
And Millie got to see me do ritual for the first time.
That brings up an interesting thing, because I was thinking about how it is that, for my wife and I, it's, kind of like something that we can do together. It's not something that like she has to wait in another room with the other women while the men are done,
Mm-hmm.
with their meeting, which, that really kind of grates on people, I would
Yeah.
imagine. I've heard.
Well,
Not that I've had that experience, but I can
again,
certainly empathize. Now,
she's
I'd
has
like,
no interest in going into meetings when it's just me and guys discussing the finances of an organization for an hour and a half.
sure.
Despite how exciting it can get sometimes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure that if you guys were up to, some certain things now, like for example, let's talk about the Shriners real quick, which all I know is that of those vast names of organizations that fall under something that you could label as Masonic, that the Shriners are kind of an offshoot of some Masons. And so they're the ones that have the Shriner hospitals around the United States. And we've seen these Shriner guys and their fezzes and the little tiny cars and the parades rolling around in circles. And it looks like a lot of fun. Now, I don't know why, if it's really about having fun and it's not something that, would be degrading to women, they're really hurting, and they've got like tons of assets in terms of running, children's hospitals. Something like that might be ripe, for women joining to support a good cause rather than just to, keep the gavel going. So,
Well, I guess I can kind of say, I mean, I was a Shriner. I kind of got out of it. Dues were getting expensive, and my
mhm,
time was split. But it's a great organization. It did start off as a fun organization, and then as they realized they had all this money just sitting there, that's when they opened the first Shriner Hospital, Burn Hospital, in Shreveport, Louisiana, and then it just got bigger and bigger from there. It's
mhm.
the Shrine Hospital that actually invented the skin grafting method, where they could take a postage size sample of skin and turn it into like a paper size sheet
Wow.
of where before you had to do a 1-to-1 skin graft.
Mm,
They also invented Botox, which was not for
mm,
rich white ladies or rich ladies to go out and get their wrinkles taken out. It was
mhm,
for helping burn victims and scarification and all.
mm.
But then somebody figured out, hey, look, you can get rid of wrinkles. So,
So Eddie, I have this image that someone shot. As a matter of fact, the very lovely lady,
okay.
but she is a really good photographer, and she takes a lot of pictures there in Nolens. And she gave me permission to use this for my Odd Fellows Public Relations, Odd Fellows History and Mystery nonprofit, which I established. So, and I just love this bas relief. It's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, it boggles my mind how much skill went into making this. And so the great thing about it is that this is sort of what we call an emblematic thing in Odd Fellowship and also in Masonry, I believe, as well. Whenever you have this kind of a piece of art that holds the emblems to which your fraternity holds dear, then it's an emblematic display, an emblematic chart. Sometimes they're paintings and sometimes they're on silk embroidered. And so I'd like to run through some of these. Now, these are kind of before Odd Fellows went through a change in terms of their degrees and their emblems. So there was a change in the late 1800s whenever the Odd Fellows in the United States completely divorced themselves from the Odd Fellows in England. And they sort of tried to go back and make things really their own. So like, for example, you see the moon and the stars here, and then the sun. So those are no longer, the emblems that we use, but there are plenty of them that are. So for example, the hourglass with the wings, representing time flying, the Holy Bible, heart at hand. This one here is the globe, sort of like meaning like global service, no longer one that we use. And so, and there's a couple of them, like for example, in the very bottom left, you have a lily. So those are representative of the Rebekahs, and also the beehive in the 9 o'clock position. So that represents the Rebekahs also. And then going up from there to the 10 o'clock position, we have universal justice, which is representative of the cantonment. And a little bit to the right of that, you have the sacrificial altar. which is a symbol from the encampments. So, and in the middle, of course, we have an a representation of one of our missions, which is to relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphans. So here is, a representation of a mother caring for children. So I love this. I've got it on the background of my website for my nonprofit. I love it so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing it in person one day. And it'd be so cool if there's some way that we could get this thing completely cleaned up. And I look forward to seeing it. And I'm sure that Eddie, you'll be able to get me there whenever we go.
Oh, yeah. Let me know. We'll get you in.
So let's talk about some of these symbols. Now, I know, and I want to say something in general about Odd Fellowship and something in general about Masons that I understand. So you can clear this one up for me so that I understand it correctly. Now, for the most part, if you were to take a look at all of the things that Odd Fellows teaches through its degrees and initiations, in the different branches and all of the different degrees, that most of what is talked about is something that's sourced from the Christian Bible, not the Old Testament exclusively, and not from the Torah exclusively. It's New Testament. So that means combination of both the Old Testament and the New Testament. So and we're required to have the Holy Bible open during our meetings. Now, Odd Fellows is not does not discriminate based on religion, but our teachings are Judeo-Christian. So my understanding is, because I've seen some things from Masonry, that there's some other things that are kind of brought in, so like, for example, Masonry itself as a craft, as a skill, is something that involves certain things. Like, for example, whenever you use the expression being on the level, that's one of those things that sort of, is a Mason kind of thing. Yes. So what would you say are some of the influences that are brought into the different degrees and teachings of Masons besides the Judeo-Christian, holy text? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk a bit about it. One
10,000 feet view. This doesn't have to be, perfectly detailed kind of,
No, because I won't, because I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, they both draw on the Bible for inspiration for our legends and stories. I would have to say the biggest difference between Odd Fellows rituals and Masonic rituals is that we would use in Freemasonry, we draw on characters and situations from the Bible, but a lot of our legends have been rewritten for allegorical purposes, for teaching moral lessons, and for reasons that we will never know because it's lost to the sands of time. In some cases in our legends, characters are recast in different roles. They have different situations. Whereas in Odd Fellows, we tend to stick more verbatim to the Bible, I find, and don't recast roles or redo situations, even though in some cases, yes, I think some of it and some of the verbiage has been made up. But I think that's the main difference when it comes to the Bible.
Okay. Now, I do know that, like, for example, there are some things that I've seen that are around astrology or astronomy, also some things around math, that are kind of brought in, because I know that there's like some, something about Euclid,
Pythagorean theorem, 47th problem of Euclid, yes.
Right. So, so then there are some other things that are drawn in, yes?
Yeah, definitely. Hard to, it gets to be where a lot of that stuff is brought in, but it doesn't play a significant role at times. Just like some of our symbols are mentioned, but don't get a lot of, but don't play as much as people would think, I guess.
So, okay. I want to go back to the thought of there being a similar, but Judeo-Christian values obviously influenced Masonry and the Odd Fellows. But there's also a whole nother set of things that influence the Odd Fellows and the Freemasons, which goes back to Hermeticism. So there was all sorts of different pseudosciences, arts, extra religious studies, from the Martinists to the Rosicrucians back in the Enlightenment period. And a lot of the leftovers of the Enlightenment period were some pretty cool symbols and stuff like that. If you can show my my camera again, I can actually just kind of flash something up on the screen here. So first, I want to show you something now similar to what you showed us there, the bas relief. This is a Masonic one, and if you notice down here, you've got the beehive. That's just one of the overlapping symbols. Oh, sorry, I showed it to the wrong side of my phone. There we go. You get the beehive,
right,
and other symbols there. Now where they all kind of got their mojo though is from their symbolic mojo is from Hermeticism. This is where a lot of these really cool symbols come from, is some of the amalgamation of religious sciences which happened during the
Enlightenment.
Really big time, yeah, big time from the Middle Ages. So like we're talking 1300s all the way up to the 1800s, and then that got into oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the term, but it sounds like philosophy, but it's a different. They've like mixed it up a little bit, but it's philosophical, spiritual thing, and a lot of it is surprisingly Christian, which you know, I'm Jewish myself, but I'm very interested to see how, you know, Albert Pike tells people to go read the Zohar and study Kabbalah, and it's like, well, that's interesting. Why, you know, why do you care about?
I would say at this point, we could almost do, Joseph, you talked about other topics. We could do a whole other podcast just on Kabbalistic influences, but then again, it might take you farther away from Odd Fellows, because I don't think Odd Fellows have much in the way of Kabbalistic influences. And I will say this, as much as we can connect the dots, and I love the Kabbalah, I study it. I do wonder at times if it's an instance of, and I have that book, Esoterica, I have it, and I've done the course. There's a Master Craftsman course on that. I completed it. It's a very good course from the Spring Council, but you have to be a Scottish Rite Mason, 32nd degree. The only thing I would say is that, yep, there's your 14th degree ring. On the inside band, you have Virtus Youngsit Mors non separabit. What virtue has united, death cannot separate it, on the inside band. The only thing I would say is that I do wonder at times, keep in mind when Albert Pike came around, one of the things you learn in that book right there is that he was not close to the beginnings of Freemasonry. And he felt that because he's getting in 1850, 1860, and he's 100, you know, I don't know, 1717, he's way from the source, and he's trying to dig deep. In Esoterica, you learn how much he's trying to dig deep. But I do feel like at times maybe there's some retconning going on, that they're finding meaning where maybe meaning wasn't there. That doesn't mean it's not meaningful now, but I don't know if the original authors truly meant for it to be a Kabbalistic system. But we are going off base here. So this is a chart, and what's funny is an old version of this chart. This is, I believe, I remember correctly, it's from 1890. It's a lithograph, and you can buy reproductions of this. It's called From Jerusalem to Jericho. And all the listeners here, they're Odd Fellows, are obviously picking out all the different symbols and whatnot. Now, once again, this was produced by the Pettibone Company in 1890. What's funny is Etoile Polaire has an old one of these charts hanging in its lodge hall. And I was the first one that I know of, that nobody else, everybody seems surprised when I tell them, everybody thought this is a Masonic chart. Now, you might wonder how in the heck they can think that. Now, to do that, I'm gonna have to share another image real quick.
Well, the
And now I'll
Oddfellows
be able to
symbols
find it.
weren't that obvious, though. If you just
Well,
look
you're
at
right.
it,
You're right. I'm
you
gonna
have to
put it
look
back
real
up
close to
again.
see it. Yeah.
You're right. It is subtle. And this chart right here. Wow, look at that. This was produced by the Pettibone Company, I believe 1897, about 3 years. So apparently Pettibone Company, which produces
Nice.
fraternal stuff, produced this chart.
Huh.
And notice you got the altar, you got the rainbow, you got the ark, you have all these symbols, and notice how similar it is. And most Masons have seen this chart. A lot of lodges love to have this chart hanging. So it should be little wonder that this chart was mistaken for this one. Look how similar it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make a passing glance and don't look at it detailed, you can easily think it's that Masonic one from Darkness to Light. But I immediately, if you look on the altar, you can see the triple links and an axe.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can see Jonathan and David as you're going, the Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
There's the brazen serpent next to the Good Samaritan. They even got the Rebekahs off to the side, way off. It's hard to see there. And the degree of truth. And then you get into the encampment degrees. You can't see it, but they actually write the name of the Golden Rule. And way at the top is the Patriarch Militants. But this chart really shows just how similar, it could be. I'm not in the encampment yet. I'm hoping to join. So I don't know if Noah makes an appearance in the later degrees, and you probably shouldn't tell me because I'm not there yet. But I think these two charts from Pettibone Company really illustrate just some of the overlap that we see.
Yeah.
I can say in the Scottish Rite, the Brazen Serpent makes an appearance in the 25th degree, Night of the Brazen Serpent.
Mm-hmm. I was going to mention to you too that I have this really great thing, which I will put up right now. So it's actually the Lord's Prayer. So here on the left, you've got the Lord's Prayer done by Masonic influences. And the one on the right is the Lord's Prayer done with Oddfellows influences. And if you stand back just a little bit, you cannot tell the difference. They look exactly the same because they're done by the same artists. I mean, you guys might be familiar with the fact that there's this really great Oddfellows one, which says, friendship, love, and truth. And it's done by Currier and Ives. So, these guys were like huge, lithograph producers. And they, sometimes were commissioned to make these kinds of lithographs, just like the ones that we're looking at here. And you just have to look closely and see who is it that commissioned it. And sometimes it'll have the actual lithographer who made it, or other times it would just have the name of the company that commissioned it. So sometimes they're actually the same parties, but depending on who wants credit for it, they'll do it the way that they want to do it. But yeah, in the art of lithography, the symbols there's so many symbols that are in common. And I was kind of hoping to get like a thing done in our lodge where I would have somebody make a mural where we would, because we did have two Mason lodges that were using our Oddfellows Lodge. We had a regular Masons, and we also had the Mosaic Lodge, which is, Prince Hall, right?
I'm not too familiar with that. I think I've heard of it, but I'm not too familiar with Mosaic.
Okay. Well, anyways, they're primarily, African Americans. And so, they're both groups that meet in our lodge building. And I wanted to do something that was for Oddfellows, but also that they could enjoy. I didn't want to make it so that if they brought in guests, they would not feel welcome. So I wanted to identify all of the symbols that we have in common and to do something very beautiful on the walls that would, kind of make it more appealing to everybody that was there, Oddfellows and Masons. And, unfortunately that didn't pan out. They actually, the regular Masons moved to an adjacent city. So that never happened in time. But it would have been a pretty cool idea, I think. Now, one thing that people should know, the Masons do not use the 3 links. That is something that is unique to Oddfellows. Most fraternities have the handshake, like what you would see on just about everything with Odd Fellows, is the 3 links: FLT, friendship, love, and truth, and also the handshake, and also the all-seeing eye of God. Those are like the most common elements that you see with Odd Fellows. And the all-seeing eye of God is very common with Masonic symbolism. And I don't know to what extent the handshake, as far as friendship goes, is important to Masonry. I don't know. But you guys would have to speak to that. And I don't know if you guys use the bundle of sticks representing, that we're stronger
not
together.
bundle of sticks.
No. Okay, great.
No.
Well, I think that we've kind of covered a lot of the ground that I wanted to cover, and we also included a bit more than I was expecting. This is kind of be a bit of a long episode, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of really interesting things that can be picked over. And
can I say one more thing
sure.
before we disappear?
Sure.
So one thing we should bring up, we talked a lot about these different Masonic degrees and higher degrees and 32nd degree. One of the biggest misconceptions, even among Freemasons, is, and some go the opposite way, is that the use of the word higher is really a misnomer. It's not higher in the terms of better. It's more like higher in the sense of a continuation. We like to say there's nothing really higher than the 3rd degree. We all meet on the level. Everybody's sort of equal. Now, in Lodge, there is a hierarchical structure.
Hierarchical.
Yes, that's the word. The worshipful master's in charge. When Lodge is in session. After Lodge, we're all said to be equal. And just because somebody's a 32nd or a 33rd does not make them better than a 3rd degree Mason. What it indicates is they joined an independent body called the Scottish Rite. And usually when they join that, in 2 or 3 days, they will be a 32nd. But it does not give them any ranks or privileges or anything like that. They're just in another group, is what it is. I wanted to make sure we're clear on that.
That's actually a really good point that I wanted to jump on right after he did his introduction, because a lot of people will ask, who don't know anything about Freemasonry, will ask me, because I'm very, what
rank are you? Yep, they always ask you.
What do you think I'm most proud of as a Freemason? Now, and this is well, but specifically, I told you what office I'm in.
Yeah.
In my Blue Lodge, and because that's a lot of work. It is. I'm a junior warden of a lodge. I'm a pillar officer. That's a big deal. And then I'll have people just going, "Are you you're not 33rd degree though?" And it's like, well, no, I'm 32nd degree. If that means something to you, but I know it doesn't, because Knight of I can't remember the name of the knight, the white. You're a white hat.
Knight Templar.
No. In Scottish.
Inspector General Honorary is the white hats.
But you're a the knight.
Knight Commander Court of Honor. Yeah, we wear red hats. Knight Commander of the Court of Honor. Yes.
Yeah. So that means that you've invested a lot of time into Scottish Rite, because I like most Masons, who you join, and then they go, okay, now sign here, and you get to go drink from the fire hose and get all get the Scottish Rite degrees too, and then from there to the shrine, and so it's that's that was what made him saying he's a 32nd degree special than me. I didn't even mention I was 32nd degree, because they didn't I just got all the degrees and pay my dues. So I got a card,
but it's still all good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Well, of course, I did that because who inspired me to join the Masons to begin with? Albert Pike. And here I get to be a Scottish Rite Mason where he is interred. It's really cool. So it's a very cool situation.
Well, I just have a final thought that I wanted to wrap things up with, and I'll let you guys, kind of like, just say something real quick to wrap it up. But this whole conversation kind of reminds me of something that back when I was in the military, that it just seems so much the same thing. They have these certain levels of security clearances, so like everybody's heard of top secret and stuff like that. But one of the things that I found out is that you don't even know what they call those other degrees, not degrees, what they call those other security clearances until you get to a certain security clearance. Once you get to that security clearance, at least you know the names of all of the other security clearances. So it sort of reminds you of the same thing. It's like, you can't really know what's, in the box until you're actually inside the box, because that is really how I feel talking to you guys. I know that we got some questions answered, and I hope that you both were very satisfied with your answers, because you're sort of representing the Masons by being in this podcast and me making it public. So I hope that you're good with everything that you've said. And I'm sure that there will be people who will post questions. So I invite you both to watch,
we'll come back. Yeah.
And, answer people might have questions. So I want to thank you guys, for being a part of this. And again, you're welcome to come back and be a part of another podcast with me. Just let me know what topic you would like to discuss, and I'll be very happy to do it with you. So, Sully, thank you very much. I love the perspective that you brought, and Eddie, it's great, that we get a chance to chat. And, you and I have talked a lot over, I helped to bring people into your lodge there,
Yes, you did. Yes.
So, I'm so happy that I was
We
able
appreciate
to
that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And good people too. Yeah.
Yes, they're good people. Yeah.
So, so again, I want to thank you guys. And, if there's anything you just want to say in closing, then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. So go right ahead.
Well, I don't have much to say. Thank you for having us. I think we scratched the surface. One thing I can point out is you can see this relationship between Freemasonry and Odd Fellowship just in the fact that even in there's antique jewelry with the 3 links and the square and compass together. I've seen it on eBay. Even back then, they were producing this stuff. And to my knowledge, there's not too much, and I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's the most common dual fraternity type stuff that they produce, rings and whatnot. That so there's a relationship. There was that much dual membership between the 2 fraternities.
Very good point. And also too, on a lot of tombstones where you see Odd Fellows and you see, Masons, sometimes you'll see both representations of Odd Fellows and Masons. Yeah.
And I can say in Odd Fellows Rest, there is a brother who is a Mason, an Odd Fellow, and a Knights of Pythias, all 3. And he has all 3 symbols. So if you ever make it down, Sully, to New Orleans with Joseph, you can definitely see this. It's an amazing tomb. And if I were to join one other fraternity, it would be Knights of Pythias. Let me just say that. I'm kind of jealous on you on that one.
You'd have the FDR trifecta. FDR was also all 3 of those. And, when it comes to seeing these amazing, beautiful symbols and coming to visit, if you guys are ever in DC, you got to check out Congressional Cemetery. Incredible stones there. There's B.B. French's stone there. Amazing Oddfellow and Freemason. And you've got just these. We actually did somebody from the historical preservation group there actually helped us get the right equipment and scrub down one of the Oddfellows tombstones there, which was an incredible project. And we got Oddfellows, Masons. Actually, they have an entire Masonic section, which is really cool. And you want to talk about stuff that only a Mason would get. They have a statue that looks like nothing. They have a flag that has the square and compass on it. And then right next to it is just an ugly giant brick, and then on top of it is a smoother one. And I remember, one of the Oddfellows was like, I don't know what's going on here. Is that unfinished? And it's like, it's a Masonic reference. You either get it or you don't, and it's awesome. So, and this is one thing I want to say. So you've been invited up to DC to go see the Masonic section of the Congressional Cemetery, and down to New Orleans to see all the Oddfellow stuff down there. You'll never be invited to join the Freemasons. You have to ask.
That's right. That is one of the big differences. You're right.
Right.
Yeah, I actually have a friend of mine who's one of my best friends. I served with him in the Marines, and we're still good friends. And he has told me about how great Masons is and everything, but he's never asked me. And
Right.
so I do understand it's because,
Right.
and
That's a very good point, Sully. Yes,
said, you know,
there's a big difference. We can ask in Odd Fellows, but in Freemasonry, you're not supposed to ask
right.
Yeah.
someone to join.
Well,
It's their own free will and accord.
Yeah, and it's it's a huge misunderstanding too, because a lot of people
Yeah.
throughout history, they've always thought like, well, I would have joined the Freemasons, but I was never invited. I have to be
Some
invited.
say
And,
they
like,
thought, yeah, they
exact
think you have to
opposite.
be invited. It's the exact opposite. Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that we learned something important. If somebody comes up to you and says, hey, would you like to join the Masons? They're not real.
Exactly.
Or they're
Okay,
breaking
guys.
their obligation. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you guys both so much again. And join us for another episode. Please make sure that you subscribe and join us for our next episode of the Odd Fellows Oddcast. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.